There are a lot of secrets in America right now, and they're going to be exposed. What's up, everybody? It's Danielle Bradley. I'm here again to share another dream that God gave to me about the crazy times that are about to hit right here in America. So I want you to stay tuned for the dream, as well as make sure you stay tuned for the interpretation of the dream, because it's very deep. And also stay tuned for tips on how you and your family can get prepared for these times so that when they do hit, you don't have to be a part of it. Check it out. So the dream started out with me in some type of holding room. Now this holding room was inside of this detention center. And I was in a panic because I didn't know what I did and I didn't know why I was there, but I did know I didn't break any laws and I didn't deserve to be there. This room was really, really large and it was all white. It had white floors, white ceilings, it had white bright lights, and it had white tables. Now there were a lot of people in this room, but I seemed to be the only person in a panic. I really didn't want to be there. As I looked out the window, I could see that there were 2 guards coming. And I knew that these guards were coming to take people to transport them somewhere else. I just didn't know where, but I did know I didn't want to go. So I looked to the other side of the room and I could see that there was this window slightly open. And as I'm looking at the window, I can hear God speak to me. And he told me to jump out that window and run. Don't look back. Don't try to be a hero. Don't try to save anybody. Just jump and run. So as the guards were approaching the door, I did just what God told me to do. I jumped out of the window and I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't try to save anybody. I didn't try to convince anybody to come with me. I just ran. Now, as I started running, I made it to this parking lot. And when I made it to the parking lot, these huge bright lights turned on. They just turned on. So I was fully exposed, but it was nighttime. So I'm running and I tried to crouch down and duck. And at some point I had to get on my stomach and I did like this little bear crawl to make it across the parking lot. Luckily, I made it across the parking lot. And when I did, I came to this sidewalk. Now, as I'm walking down this sidewalk, I noticed that there were a lot of people walking towards the detention facility. Some of them were on their cell phones, some of them were video chatting, and some people had on headphones and they were listening to music, just kind of bopping along, unaware of what they were doing. They were walking straight towards the detention center, and I wanted to yell out to them, hey, you guys, turn around, go the other way, you're gonna get caught, you're gonna get put in this detention center. But I remember what God told me, don't try to save anybody, don't try to be a hero, just run. So that's what I did. I let them keep walking and I just kept running forward. Now, eventually, I made it to this street. And across the street, it looked like this hospital. It was a very large building and I figured I might be safe in there, so let me just go ahead and run there. When I made it to the hospital, there was no security guard at the front of the building, so I was able to slip right in. So as I walk in, I'm looking around and I see all of these different doors, but there was one special door that caught my attention. This door had a special security desk right in front of it. And just as I started to look at it, I could see that this doctor was on his way walking out. Now, as he walked out, he tried really hard to keep the door as closed as possible as he slipped through and then shut the door right behind him. He didn't want anybody to see what was going on inside this door. So once he walked away and was out of sight, I decided I wanted to get in this door. But I didn't have a badge. So the security guard turned his head and he was doing something off to the side, and I was able to slip through the door without him noticing me. Once I walked into the door, I was in this huge laboratory. This huge laboratory had hundreds of doctors and scientists and technical engineers. And they all had on different lab coats. Some had on white lab coats, some had on dark blue lab coats, and some had on light blue lab coats. and there were these huge computers. They were like super mega computers that went all the way from the floor all the way to the ceiling, and they just held a lot of information in them. There were also these drawers that had specimens inside, where if you opened them up, you could look at these little incubator tubes and cubes and all of these different things that held different organisms and different medicines and different things that the chemists were working with. And as I started to look around this room, the doctors all started to notice me, and they were looking like, hold on, who is this person? She doesn't belong in here. She doesn't have a badge. So I started to get really nervous, and I started to back myself up out of this room. And when I backed up and made it to the door, the security guard was standing right there looking at me like, hey, where's your badge? And so I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, but he got embarrassed because he didn't know how I ended up in the room, and he was just really salty because he let me slide through without him noticing. So instead of getting himself in trouble and instead of putting me in trouble, he just let it go. And I was able to run outside of that building. For whatever reason, I knew that that building was not the place that I wanted to be either. So I ran out of the building and I made it outside. Now, the dream kind of faded, but then I came back into the dream. But this time, when I came back to the detention facility, I was in a helicopter. And some kind of way, I was able to radio some of the people inside of the detention facility. And I was telling them like, okay, this is the plan. This is how I'm gonna get you guys out of here. This is where I need you to meet me. And then when you do, I'll put you on board this helicopter and I'll be able to get you out of here. And right before the dream ended, I heard God speak to me again, and he said, this is just practice. And then I woke up. Okay, so when I woke up from the dream, I was so ready for the interpretation. I was ready for God to break this dream down to me because I knew it was deep. I knew it was real deep. And boy, was I right. I mean, it was so deep that I literally had to pull out a pen and paper and I had to write everything down just so that I made sure I got the information correct so that I could give it to you correctly so you would know what to do to avoid these things. First of all, the detention facility. This was a place where people had voluntarily come to get new treatments from the government. The government in a little bit of time is going to be trying to reach people to come out and try out these new medicines that are going to make you smarter. They're going to make you healthier. They're going to make you live better lives. They're going to give you better thinking. And their lies and their deceptions, what they're really trying to do is bring you into these facilities so that they can microchip you. Now, remember the part where I told you that God told me to just jump out of the window, don't try to be a hero, don't try to save anybody? Well, he told me that because those people who were there willingly came and they were volunteers. And the reason he didn't want me to try to save them was because they were there out of their own stupidity and out of their own unawareness. He said he didn't want me to waste his precious time on people who didn't get it and just downright didn't understand. And he didn't want me to save people who didn't want to be saved. Now, remember when I told you I was walking down the sidewalk and I saw those people and they were voluntarily walking towards this facility? Well, they had on their headphones, they were listening to their music, they were all caught up in their social media, they're on their video chats. Well, this was how the government was able to get to them. This was how they were able to blindly walk into something that was going to harm them in the long run. Now, where did all these things come from? Where were the people transported to when they were in the facility? That's where the laboratory comes in. Now, remember, in the laboratory, I told you that there were different types of people. You had doctors, scientists, chemists, and technical engineers. Right now, all of those different types of people are working together to get you to go get microchipped. not just to get microchipped, but they want to start injecting us with all of these different chemicals. Okay, they're developing new chemicals and they need human guinea pigs in order to try them out. And who do you think those human guinea pigs are? You. Okay, so this is what they were creating. The doctors were the ones who were creating, inserting, and implementing the microchips. Okay? The scientists and the chemists were the people who were creating new medicines of control. They were designed to make people physically weaker over time. And they're also going to make people sterile, which is going to be a form of population control. Also, it's going to make people's minds weaker and easier to manipulate so that they can control your thinking. Now, the other thing that the scientists and chemists were responsible for was figuring out how they can get these medicines and these new little formulas. They were trying to figure out how they can get them into your food, which is what they've been doing actually leading up until this point. The next set of people were the technical engineers. The technical engineers were assigned to creating new lies, new deceptions, new forms of luring, new tools of appeal, and new tools of deception and distractions. They're going to do this through social media, through music, through your cell phones, and they were also responsible for creating new tools of monitoring, watching, and keeping track of people. And this is how the people who were coming down the sidewalk, this is how they were being deceived. They were being deceived through their cell phones, through social media, through their Snapchats, because they weren't paying attention. These were the distractions that had people blindly walking into a facility that was in the long run going to do them harm. That leads us to the last part of the dream. The last part of the dream was me coming back in the helicopter and me being able to radio people in the facility in order to bring them out of there. So, the helicopter was representative of God and me being a source of light, me being able to help people who don't belong in this facility, who don't believe in microchipping. It's me trying to give this information. It's me making these videos and putting the word out there to the people who actually get it, to the people who know what's up, to the people who are actively trying to figure out how them and their family are going to survive during these times without being microchipped, without being poisoned in their food, and without being taken over through social media. So, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you guys some tips on what you and your family can start doing to get prepared so that when these times hit, you don't have to be a part of it. Okay, number one, the first thing you have to do is you got to get in tune with God through Christ Jesus. Okay? That is how you are going to hear. That is how you're going to know. That is how you're going to be aware. That's where you're going to get your instructions and your guidance from, so that you'll know what to do and what not to do. You'll know where to be and where not to be. Now, let's go on to tip 2. If you remember the part in my dream where I was told to jump out of the window and run, that part represents getting in some type of shape. Because whether you want to or not, there may come a time where you're going to have to run. Someone's trying to microchip you and you know that this is not God's will, you are going to have to run. So start thinking about different exercise regimens you can get in, how you can get your stamina up, how you can get your endurance up, so that if someone like the government or martial law sets in, or the doctors are trying to chase you down so they can inject you, you'll know how to run. And not just physically run, but mentally run. Mentally running means staying 1 or 2 steps ahead of the government, and that Of course, it's just being smart enough to educate yourself, watching videos on YouTube, making sure you're staying in tune with what's going on in the country and outside of the country. These things are going to leave you steps ahead so that you don't have to be caught up in the chaos. Number 3, you guys, you got to make sure that you watch the foods that you eat, because even at this moment, these chemists and these doctors are implementing these chemicals into the food. Watch what you're consuming. The foods we eat, the drinks that we drink, they are contaminated. Some of these things are very poisonous. The government needs you to get sick. They need you to get sick so you can go to the hospital and they can start injecting you and using you as human guinea pigs. They need to monitor and see, okay, if we give them this type of chemical, what kind of result are we going to get? If we start putting this type of stuff in their food, how can we control the population like this? You need to be aware and understand that a lot of the things that you think are good for you may actually be bad for you. The next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that your time and your energy is not being completely sucked up by social media. Watch out for postings and advertisings of things that seem too good to be true. Like if a doctor or a company says, hey, guess what? We're having some new treatments and we're going to pay you for it. Or watch out for things like, if you don't come in and get this shot, then you're going to be taxed extra hard, or you're going to get these fines and these fees laid on you. Watch out for things like that, because that's going to happen, where you're going to be fined for not getting certain shots, and you're going to be fined for not showing up to certain events that they're going to start putting on where they want the American people to come out and support. So make sure that you watch out for things that are happening on social media, on the news. Don't be deceived by these lies or these tools of luring, because that's all they're trying to do. They're trying to lure you. And the last thing you want to do is you just want to be careful. You want to be aware. Start paying more attention to the news, what's going on in America, what's going on outside of America. Start paying attention. Start watching out and looking for the signs, because these are going to be the things that help you to stay out of the enemy or the government's way when they start implementing these things. Like, you have to get this shot and you have to take this medicine. They're going to start doing that. You don't want to be a part of it. So make sure you're being aware. I think the main point of this dream is that you need to start paying attention and you need to stop being so easily deceived. Social media is a tool for some people for business, some people for entertainment. But behind social media, you have a whole world of people who are evil, and they are trying to get to you through these new tools of deception and distraction. Make sure you're not caught up in those. Ladies and gentlemen, we are moving into a very, very crazy time in America. These are not things that you would expect to happen in America, but these times are coming and you want to be prepared. So please take heed to these warnings. Stay in tune with God, and if you have information, make sure that you are sharing them with people who understand and who get it. I want you guys to click the links in my description box so you can hear about other dreams that God gave me, along with their interpretations and the tips on what you and your families can start doing right now, so that when these crazy times hit, you don't have to be a part of it. Until my next video, you guys stay blessed.